You know those lines you see on a globe or in the news? The ones that separate one country from another? Well, what if I told you those aren't just simple lines? What if they're actually living, breathing systems that dictate our economies, our identities, and even why we go to war? Today, we're going to dissect the anatomy of a border. Let's get into it. This quote right here, this is the key to everything we're talking about. A border isn't just a static thing. No, it's a dynamic framework. It's a filter that controls who and what gets in and out. It's a source of national pride. And, way too often, it's the flashpoint for some of the biggest conflicts in the world. So keep that idea in your head as we go. All right, so first things first, where did these powerful lines even come from? It's not like someone just takes a pen and draws a line on a map one day. Nope. Creating an official international border is actually a very deliberate four-step process that takes an idea from a legal document and turns it into a physical, enforced reality on the ground. What's so cool about this is how it moves from the abstract to the totally concrete. It all starts with words, with a definition in a legal treaty. Then it gets visual when it's delimited, officially drawn on a map for everyone to see. Step 3 is where it gets real, when it's demarcated with actual physical stuff, fences, stone pillars, you name it. And finally, it comes to life when it's administered, which is just the official way of saying governments are now actively managing who and what can cross that line. And if you want to see this process play out perfectly, just look at the border between the US and Canada. It was first defined in a treaty way back when to follow the 49th parallel. Then it was delimited on countless maps. And yeah, if you were to actually go walk along parts of it, you'd literally see the physical demarcation, these monuments and cleared strips of land stretching for miles, showing you exactly where one country ends and the other begins. Okay, so with such a clear, methodical process, you'd think borders would be pretty straightforward, right? I mean, it's 4 simple steps. Well, this is where it gets really complicated, because despite that formal process, boundaries are one of the biggest sources of conflict in the world. Let's break down the 4 main ways borders cause a fight. The first type is a definitional dispute, and it kicks off right at step 1. This is when both countries have a treaty, but the language in it is super vague, or they just interpret it in completely different ways. We're talking about disputes where the placement of a single comma, or the meaning of some old-timey word from centuries ago, could mean the difference between who owns a strategic mountain pass. It's a fight over the fine print. A classic example of this is the long-running spat between Argentina and Chile over some islands in the Andes. Both countries are looking at the exact same 19th century treaty, but because the wording about mountain crests and watersheds was ambiguous, they come to totally different conclusions about who owns what. It's a perfect case of dusty old text causing very real modern-day tension. Next up, we have locational disputes. Now, this isn't a fight over the words in a treaty. This is a fight over where the boundary actually is on the ground. This happens all the time when a border follows a natural feature, like a river, which, has a habit of moving. The Rio Grande, which forms a huge chunk of the US-Mexico border, shows this perfectly. The river is the border. But rivers don't stay still, they shift their course over the years. So when the Rio Grande moves, who gets the new land that just appeared on one side? And who just lost the land that's now underwater? This creates constant arguments over who owns what piece of dirt. Our third type is an operational dispute. Now, in this case, both countries agree on the treaty. They agree on where the line is drawn. The fight is all about how the border should work. It's a conflict over policy, over management, over the day-to-day function of the border itself. Let's go back to the US-Mexico border, but look at it through this different lens. Both sides agree on its location, right? The operational dispute is about how to manage the flow of people across it. The arguments over how to enforce it, who's responsible for what, and the costs involved, that creates a constant source of massive political friction. And finally, we get to allocational disputes. Honestly, these are often the most explosive because they're about resources, money, and power. This is a fight over who gets the rights to valuable stuff, like oil, natural gas, or water, that lies on or even stretches across a boundary line. And believe me, these disputes can be incredibly dangerous. Back in the 1990s, Iraq accused Kuwait of slant drilling, basically sticking a straw sideways under the border to suck up oil from a field that was mostly under Iraqi land. This allocational dispute over black gold was one of the main justifications Iraq used to invade Kuwait, kicking off the First Gulf War. So far, we've only been talking about disputes over land you can actually walk on. But these same fights for territory and resources are happening in a place that covers over 70% of our planet. So, how in the world do you draw lines on the vast open ocean? This is where the rules get really, really interesting. Well, the answer is a huge international agreement called the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCOS for short. You can pretty much think of it as the constitution for the world's oceans. It was set up to stop a complete global free-for-all over marine resources by setting clear rules for how far a nation's power extends from its own coast. So, UNCLOS defines two key zones you see here. The first 12 nautical miles from shore are a country's territorial seas. Think of this as a country's watery front yard. It has full sovereignty, its laws apply just like they do on land. But then you have the exclusive economic zone, the EEZ, which can stretch out for 200 nautical miles. In this massive area, a country doesn't own the water itself, but it has the exclusive right to all the resources in it. Every single fish, every barrel of oil, it's all theirs. Which brings us to one of the most tense geopolitical hotspots on the entire planet, the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. Several countries are all claiming ownership here, all vying for control. Why? Well, these waters are a critical shipping lane, and they're thought to hold massive reserves of oil and gas. And this is where it gets wild. To strengthen its claim, China has actually been building brand new artificial islands, literally trying to create new coastlines to claim new economic zones, completely defying the UNCLOS agreement. It's a huge, high-stakes fight playing out right now. Okay, so we've looked at how borders are made, the conflicts they spark on land, and how they even stretch into the sea. So let's zoom all the way back out. Why does any of this really matter? What is the fundamental power of these lines that we draw all over the planet? When you boil it all down, borders do three absolutely crucial things. First, they shape our identity. They create a sense of us and them, which helps forge a national community inside the lines. Second, they regulate interaction. They act as a powerful filter for pretty much everything: trade, tourism, the flow of ideas. And third, they are the foundation of governance. You can't have a modern country without a defined territory to make laws, collect taxes, and just exist. So from legal treaties to physical walls, from shifting rivers to the deep blue sea, borders are an incredibly powerful human invention. They create order, and they give us identity, sure, but they also fuel conflict and division. And that leaves us with a really big question for our time. In a world of globalization, of instant digital connection, of shared challenges like climate change, if these boundaries are what truly define who we are, what happens when the lines inevitably start to blur?